Are we looking at inflation that is potentially at risk of, if not completely reigniting, at least not continuing its downward trajectory?
I don't think it's reigniting, but I do think that last mile, getting inflation from 3% to 2%, was always going to be the hardest. And I think what the data shows today is it's hard to get us the rest of the way down. And it's particularly been tough to do in a very rapidly growing economy. So we've also seen, the U.S. is growing incredibly strongly. And you put that together, and it's just a little bit hard to do what the Fed wants to do, which is cool demand, get people to pull back a little bit more so that we can see prices come back down a little bit more. And I think one of the worrying things is, it's really housing and services where we see inflation has really been the stickiest. And then we've seen prices really coming down for energy and for goods. And yet some of the Trump proposals are going to particularly target those areas where we've had the lowest prices, potentially driving prices up there.
Well, so let's get into some of those proposals, specifically when it comes to tariffs. On this program yesterday, Betsey, I spoke with Nazak Nakakhtar, National Security Practice Group lead at Wiley Ryan, former Commerce Department official in the first Trump administration. And this is what she had to say about the tariff proposals. Then I have a question for you.
These tariffs or this talk about addressing trade issues, they don't come out of nowhere. These have been issues that have been lingering for quite a long time. American workers are being impacted, and we have an administration who's going to go in aggressively to tackle these. And I think what Trump is doing right now is just providing transparency. These are his trade irritants. This is the friction, and he's proposing now for our trading partners to be aware of. This is how he's going to tackle the problem.
So, Betsey, she's kind of framing it similarly to how we've heard Donald Trump talk about this notion that he wants to put tariffs in place to protect American manufacturing, therefore American jobs, and also make, I guess, American native workers more competitive by driving migrants out of the country, or at least slowing the flow of them over our northern and southern borders. To what extent is that actually how this will work?
Well, it will depend really on where exactly he puts the tariffs and which are the migrants that, he is targeting and getting rid of. One of the reasons we've had such fast economic growth is because of the flow of immigration over the last year. So it's quite possible that we get rid of, we reduce immigration. He succeeds in sending some migrants packing, and that ends up slowing economic growth. The chain reaction to that is that can actually ultimately end up costing American jobs, because a lot of American workers are not doing the exact same jobs that immigrants are doing. They're actually doing the jobs that are in demand because there are immigrant workers who are willing to take the lower skill, lower wage jobs that Americans don't want to take. And the whole thing causes the economy to expand. But if you take something specific, like the 25% tariffs on goods from Canada or goods from Mexico that were, just tossed out this week, we import more than half of our fresh fruits and vegetables from Mexico, particularly in the winter. We need that. And what we're going to see there is not more jobs for Americans. We're not going to really see a big, influx in agricultural growing in the U.S. What we're going to see is higher prices for food. We think about the things that we import from Canada: crude oil, timber. Yeah. It's not like we're going to start creating a bunch of jobs for Americans in those industries because we're making those goods more expensive from Canada. And then in my home state of Michigan, I'm most worried because you have the big three American automakers who, really have a lot of connections with Canada and with Mexico. They're not making all of their cars in Canada and then importing them in for an American to drive. They're doing some of the work in the U.S. They're doing some of it in Canada. Right. Goods are crossing the border back and forth. They're not going to be able to do that anymore without racking up a bunch of tariffs. So I don't think we're going to see a big increase in jobs in American auto manufacturing as a result of this. In fact, I fear we'll lose them.
Well, as we think about jobs or the labor market as a whole and those who will be put in positions to potentially shape that policy, I do want to ask you, Betsey, given your career your past history at the Department of Labor, about the nomination of Lori Chavez-DeRemer, who was one of very few Republican co-sponsors of the PRO Act and is actually facing some conservative pushback for that reason. What does her nomination suggest to you about the way in which this incoming administration could be approaching labor policy and unions?
Well, I think that this administration's been very clear about its attitudes towards unions, which is that it's not supportive of unions. What they want.
So then why pick a nominee like this one?
I can't get inside the head of the president-elect to say why he is picking the nominees that he's picking. But all I can do is go on what he has said. Maybe what he wants to hear is some other views and figure out how he can work together with unions. But you're going to have to ask him why he picked that nominee.
Fair enough.